Aw, welcome to TV Dinners Melt My Heart and Pass the Peppermint Bark. That was the sweetest thing. To anybody who doesn't know, that intro was all about some holiday classics, some that I hadn't even thought about in a long time. The Garfield one definitely took me out of time and space. I haven't seen that in forever, but I do love that. Welcome tonight. I am your host, Jen, and I'm joined by my producer and favorite person to talk to, Josh. Sorry to everybody else, but gonna throw you in there, Josh.
Everybody else.
How are you? Yeah, right.
Sorry, I should keep things festive and friendly.
How are you tonight? And also, just to start everything off, are you are you the kind of person who really enjoys getting into the holiday spirit early, or are you the kind of person that's like, no, give me until December 24th and then I'll be ready?
Well, I'll tell you what. Just on a personal level, the holidays are a tough time of year, and just generally speaking. But every year, I try to, in some way, recapture that magic of a youthful holiday by
Mm,
filling it with as many specials and music and just everything, so I can try to recapture what it's like to really look forward to the day. And that's what the season is. It's supposed to be the build up, the 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 big, everything culminates in that big explosive feeling of joy.
I absolutely think that you're right, and I think that part of the reason that we love our TV specials and our movies and our the sort of like look backs into all of our past holiday specials is this idea that somehow we will get back that feeling of what we felt in our childhood at some point. Now, it's debatable whether we ever really get that back, but I don't think that the endeavor is necessarily a bad one. I think that a lot like, and I'll launch into one of the movies for tonight. Um, Although this is a little bit second part of our podcast. But the movie Scrooge with Bill Murray as this really top TV executive, he basically believes that his life, all of the things that he's done in his past, were characters from TV shows. And I think that sometimes that is a lot of how we view our holiday magic. We remember what it felt like when we watched Charlie Brown's Christmas special. We remember what it felt like when we saw Frosty the Snowman for the first time, or even maybe for the eighth time. We kind of collect these nostalgic memories around these super because some of them are let's face it, some of them are not even all that great, but they give us joy. And for that, I think that it deserves a whole season of watching. And I have to say that part of the reason I thought that this would be a good time to do it is not because I'm trying to, like, force the holidays on people early or anything, but because there are so many just amazing festive specials on that you can easily spend a couple hours, maybe an hour a night to watch one, and it just sort of lifts your mood. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, this was a huge part of what Christmas was looking forward to whatever was going to be on TV or a movie that was a Christmas movie. That was a big deal. Was it for you too, or was it a little bit more muted, if you will?
I think Christmas specials in particular were the last great bastion for appointment viewing, and for me.
Mm,
It was, you looked forward to the new shows doing their take on the holidays, but at the same time as the actual day approached, you looked forward to the traditional viewings of, your annual Christmas classics, the ones that networks, basically fight each other over to be able to air. And the some of these things are just so ingrained, not into just our psyches, but into the very fabric of America. I know that's a pretty lofty thing to say, but I mean, come
I
on.
think it's true.
The, I can't I can't there's some of these I can't think of possibly feeling whole without watching, over the holiday season. And these are traditions that get passed down from parent to child, generation to generation, over and over.
That's the key. The key is we as adults oftentimes want to impart that something special to our kids. And so we share with them our own feelings of happiness and nostalgia and joy about seeing what we saw. And I have to say that although obviously, we've come a long way when it comes to the technical ability that we have for creating all kinds of different programming. We still go back to these old narratives again and again. The Year Without a Santa Claus is like mandatory viewing in my house because not not because I should say not because it's all that great, but because it really brings back memories. I remember it, my kids remember it because I played it for them, and then they now continue to pass on that tradition. I think that I feel like this is one of those things that becomes it's one of the few, I should say, moments um in sort of television programming that is ritualized. We don't have a lot of them, but this one is very ritualized. And I think I'm going to explain why that might be happening a little bit later. But for now, I guess first I really would like to ask you though, do you actually have a favorite Christmas program that you love? And it doesn't have to be something old, it could be something that's just come out, or do you actually have one?
Are we talking Christmas special, Christmas movie,
Well,
um,
I'll
Christmas
leave that up to
variety
you.
show?
I'll leave that up to you. What brings you the most joy in terms of programming at this time of year, at the holiday time of year?
Well, I do multiple viewings of A Christmas Story,
Mm,
and the big showing is always on Christmas Day, while we're opening gifts.
wow.
It will always be playing in the background because it is, well, the film itself is just, it's a representation of sheer joy, of a child at Christmas. And to have that be a part of, what I'm doing at the house, like, I think it, to some of you gamers, you might you know understand what I'm saying here. It's like it adds a multiplier to what we're
Right.
doing. It
Right.
the from just it's all just like I said, it's ingrained into the fabric of Christmas here, having that movie playing, and I can't wait every year to what. In fact, that particular movie. Okay, little backstory. Every year, I take the kids on a family vacation. We go somewhere. Last few years, we haven't left Florida, mostly because of COVID related things, and it's for the last few years, it's been a little difficult to figure out exactly how other places are dealing with it.
Right.
But the last time that we decided to venture abroad because we drive everywhere, it the trip is usually anchored by one particular point, and the idea is we get there, do stuff along the way, um, and then we come back, and of course do more things on the way back. But that's basically like the turnaround point. We pick one point to get to and come back from. And the last time we really hit the road, our anchor point was Cleveland, Ohio. More specifically, a little house on what they called Cleveland Street.
Which was just put up for sale recently.
It was,
Yeah.
and we that's I said, look, we're going to this house, and nothing's going to stop us. We're going to go see the house from A Christmas Story. We are going to be where Ralphie was, and we did, and it was good. There were lots of pictures.
This is also, I think, and again, just in terms of how we perceive our entertainment, and then how we decide that we are going to ritualize it or embed it and enshrine it in our traditions, is one of the reasons that Christmas movies are so incredibly successful. But it's very easy for a Christmas movie to also become hated and panned and really not liked. And then they slide off into obscurity because people have very specific tastes about their holiday traditions. Now, this also, I mean, this sort of like segues into what I really wanted to kind of get into, which is like what to watch this holiday season. And I'm going to say that it has become an absolute industry that Hallmark pulls together year round stories of Christmas to play over the pre-Thanksgiving into the first of the year uh timeline. And they're kind of like cheesy romance novels. Some of them are better than others. They all center around very thematic points. They don't deviate very far from a pretty simple formula, but it's a wonderful formula because it makes people feel good. And I can't think of a better way to explain how Christmas movies can exist in basically the same format and still bring us so much joy. I'll say there are a lot of different ideas about Christmas stories that we have, but we usually tend to find a couple, hold on to them, and really judge everything else around that. So I'm going to start with a couple of Christmas movies that we definitely watch every year, but that I know are sort of companions in the season. One is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Now, there's a couple of different adaptations to this. We always watch the cartoon because Boris Karloff's voice is just so iconic, and I don't know, there's something endearing about that particular animation in its simple style that's just great. So we almost always watch that. We also, though, have been taking time to watch the How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Ron Howard. And that's with Jim Carrey as the Grinch. And, honestly, I didn't really give that movie a chance when it first came out. And then I really didn't think about it or even want to watch it again until my kid said, "This is really good, Mom. We need to watch this again." There's so much here. And I think sometimes just that can be a bit of an eye opener. And he was right. It really is kind of an interesting take on the Grinch. It's definitely a bit more of a character study, but it's fun. It's very fun. So those two movies combined are sort of, we definitely always kick off with those two movies. Recently, we started with kind of a list of movies that we go down. But we also have discovered that there are a lot of Christmas, what's a good word for this, variety shows, I suppose, where they have different people, singers, different entertainers, who all kind of come together and create this ambiance, which, is probably shot in July, but it feels like Christmas. And by the time that we see it, it sounds amazing. It's beautiful. I know that this is going to date me, but um, just recently we watched one that had John Denver and the Muppets, and it was actually really good. But the ones that come to mind now are Dolly Parton did one called Christmas on the Square. Dolly Parton is doing another one this year called uh, Mountain Magic Christmas. So that's something to look forward to. Those kinds of things, we they don't exist so much anymore. Later in the year, there's going to be a broadcast of Mariah Carey, who is also going to have her Christmas special. I think it's on December 20th, and that's going to be put out on CBS and Paramount. Her doing Christmas music is kind of, it's iconic, but it also gives everybody that feel good sense. So, just in terms of like what we start out with, those are usually the things that we start out with. Um, did you get a chance to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special? That was
I,
on Disney Plus that just dropped.
I have not. It is the viewing schedule is kind of tight right now, and
Mm.
want to I want to be able to put it into a place where it can be enjoyed.
Well, we did get to watch that. And I think that it was remarkably well done. It was very simple in both its concept, but then, the execution of anything that's Guardians of the Galaxy along with James Gunn is always, I think, just a little bit extra, and it made it feel really good. It just centers around a super easy theme, and then a couple of very quick plot points, and there's music in it that there's music in it that makes you understand that, like, from the outside, this is what Christmas looks like. And then by the time that you're at the end, there's another song that makes you realize this is what Christmas really is. It's very nice. I was very impressed by it. It felt very interesting because obviously, you're in the middle of a place where there is no Christmas. There is no point of reference for it, just what Quill says about it. That's it. That's all you have. And it was nice. It was really nice. So, definitely that's one to watch out for. Um okay, let's go with, cuz I've got for the second my second big block, I've got something big to talk about. Let's go with something a little offbeat. Do you watch the movie Krampus?
I do not.
Have you ever seen it?
I have not.
Wow. Okay. To anyone who doesn't know, Krampus is, honestly, I feel like I am very ill equipped to explain exactly what Krampus is, because this is not my I don't have the heritage to be able to speak to exactly what Krampus is. I can tell you that in the movie that Krampus is a being who's kind of like an anti-Santa. Um, Instead of bringing you gifts at Christmas, Krampus basically like weighs not just whether you've been good or not good, but kind of like assesses a whole situation and says, okay, this family is deserving, this family isn't deserving. I mean, it is definitely Chri- I mean, it's titled Christmas horror, but I don't know if I would go so far as to call it a horror movie as much as I would call it. It's definitely got scary moments in it, and it is very dark. It is very, very, very dark. Um, so Krampus comes and basically everything that the family wanted to experience for pleasant Christmas turns into not just disaster, but real upheaval. Um, just really crazy things happen. I won't go too far into it, but it is pretty crazy. Now, the interesting thing to me about this is that this has also become one of the things on our list that we just love to watch because we like to have the juxtaposition between the sugary, almost saccharine sweet Christmas that's the Charlie Brown Christmas, that is the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the really good feel good stuff, and something that maybe like brings us all back to a humble kind of place where we realize that, yeah, we always have a lot of work to do every single year. That it's not just about being good on one day or a couple of days out of the year. It's actually really interesting. I really do like, I like the themes in it. I also like the fact that in the end, you're not really sure if any of this ever happened or if they're just living in a kind of a time bubble. It's very super interesting. Okay. So let's move on to some Netflix stuff because I feel like Netflix is where a lot of people find many of their holiday things. But before I go into Netflix, I'm going to say that Apple TV recently bought the rights basically to all the Charlie Brown movies. And so if you want to watch the Charlie Brown Christmas special, if you want to watch the basically all of the things around this time of year that we associate with Charlie Brown, you really have to have Apple TV. It's I feel kind of sad about that. Like I wish that they would at least give regular um channels a chance to just pick it up once, but that's not how the licensing works. So it's there. If you wanted to watch it, it's there. I do think that that is an important part of how we view Christmas. We always see Christmas through the lens of Charlie Brown. We actually own those DVDs. So, do you guys watch Charlie Brown Christmas at all, Josh?
Absolutely. I don't remember when it was, but we bought a DVD pack that had it
Yeah,
included in a bundle.
yeah, that's what
And
we have too.
yeah, we made sure that we were going to be able to watch it annually, no matter what.
This the Charlie Brown music, the music by Vince, what is his name? It's jazz. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. We actually play that as ambiance music often over holiday stuff. It's really cool. So okay, so we've got that. Let's go back to Netflix. Okay, so on Netflix, Netflix keeps accumulating sort of different original titles and then interesting ideas. Jack Frost, I believe, is on Netflix on December 2nd, which is tomorrow. There will be a new Christmas Carol with Scrooge that is coming to Netflix. It's animated. It's going to have a lot of singing, and I think it'll be fun. There is A Boy Called Christmas. A Boy Called Christmas is one of those super interesting retakes on how not just the Santa legend came into being, but also how we view what the legend of Santa is. It's that I really did like it. I liked it a lot. There is obviously, for anyone who hasn't seen it, the animated special called Klaus. That is also a fun one. And they use some really interesting techniques in animation. I really loved that movie a lot. I loved the message of that movie too. That's another Santa origin story. Um, Jingle Jangle. This is such a fun movie. I don't I know that around the time that it came out that it got a lot of fanfare and it was kind of hyped. And then it came out and then I never heard anything else about it again. But I feel like this deserves not just a second look, but a bunch of rewatches. Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Story is pure Christmas magic. There's, little adventures inside of the big adventure. There are really heartwarming pieces to it. But overall, it is the way that we look at Christmas and the differences that we look at Christmas, I think, between when we're older and when we're younger. And it does a really good job of illustrating both. I really loved this. The music in it and the cast are absolutely amazing. Did you see that movie at all, Josh?
Yes.
Did you like it?
No.
See, I've gotten that response from quite a number of people, and I don't know why. I really, really liked it. I
Because
thought it
there's no
was great.
Christmas in it.
Well, I mean, I think we'll talk about this after the podcast because I think there is. I think you have to look at this with a wider allegorical lens, but we'll leave that. In any event, it's fun. It's a very fun, festive thing to watch this time of year. Um, okay.
Let me say though that and I did maybe jump the gun a bit. As far as saying I didn't like it. Um, but yeah, that's my my qualm. It's like it's supposed to be this big Christmas movie. There's no Christmas.
It's different. It is very different. The toy maker aspect of it, I think, is what makes it fun to me. Okay. What about the Christmas Chronicles? Have you seen the Christmas Chronicles?
Yes, love them.
Okay. The first Christmas Chronicles, I thought was absolutely amazing, just wonderful. We had such a good time watching that. The second one is a little bit. It's not as great, but it's still awesome. And honestly, seeing Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell together was a joy, just a joy. So just absolutely love it for just that, if nothing else. But the Christmas Chronicles is really fun. I like it a lot. I feel like the Christmas Chronicles is what the Santa Claus series over at Disney Plus, which I'll try to get into in a bit, is trying to accomplish and just failing at, just not succeeding at all. Um, we'll talk about the Santa Claus on Disney Plus in a second, but if you're looking for something that is that kind of upbeat tempo, the Christmas Chronicles definitely does that. Um, there's also a movie called The Holiday Calendar, which I don't know if many people have seen, but I loved this. It really touched, I think, a place in my heart that I didn't even realize I needed someone to touch. It's basically this lady who gets a rather mysterious calendar, which is, kind of it's an advent calendar. And it seems to predict the future. It also apparently may fulfill wishes. It's super cool. This movie is really fun. It definitely has all of the elements of being a good Christmas show. The formula is a little the formula is a little, it's easy to see through, but it's still very, very, very cool. I love it very much. And I love the idea of that advent calendar. I wish I could find it. I would go buy 9. I seriously love them. Um, okay. The last one on Netflix that I just want to touch on real quick is there is a section, or I should say, a two-part series called "The Holiday Movies That Made Us," and it's interesting because they add The Nightmare Before Christmas in here as if this is a Christmas movie when we all know that that's a Halloween movie. But okay. Um,
I disagree.
Yeah, I know. Even my kid disagrees too. The holiday movies that made us, with the making of A Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a crazy story, really crazy, is really very interesting. Um, there are there's so many reasons that that movie may never have, like, that it could have not been made at all. So much time that went by when they didn't when things didn't come together the way that they were supposed to. It's a really good, fascinating watch. But then they also go into Elf. And Elf is one of those movies that we have to watch every year, sometimes two or three times. And I know some people can't stand it, but honestly, Elf is such a perfect Christmas movie. It doesn't try to do anything other than be exactly what it is. It's not pretentious. It doesn't have any special message to it other than you really need to love the people that you're around. There are found family components to it in multiple places. Um, Leon Redbone is the voice of the snowman. I mean, you just can't get much better than this. But Elf is part of the holidays that made us too. There's a whole behind the scenes stuff. There's a whole lot of interesting um, history that's in there, which is fascinating, very fascinating. So, what's your opinion on Elf, Josh?
It was an instant classic. Classic. John Favreau was uh, he did an amazing job, and it's
Ab-
funny because as you said in when they were talking about how it was made, it really it was such a happenstance thing that you know, hey, my buddy is friends with this guy that works out with someone that might be interested in reading your script,
Right?
and that these things. It sounds weird, but yeah, these things kind of happen all the time. And it's really a matter of just having some kind of connection, and sometimes that connection is going to the same gym as somebody or playing the same on the
Right.
same pickup basketball, team, and you just, hey, I got this script. It's a Christmas movie. You want to check it out? Yeah, sure, I'll check it out. Hey, I thought it was great. I'm going to send it along to Will, see what he thinks. And Will
Yeah,
Ferrell was like, yeah,
I loved that. I loved the fact that everybody was like so into it the moment that they realized what it was about.
love that
Um,
movie.
I'm gonna break for 1 second because in the next half of the podcast we are going to talk about a very specific type of Christmas movie. Um, but I want to reiterate, I guess, at this point that most of our holiday movies in the West, right? Because we're only talking about American movies or movies that are made in uh, for American consumption or Western European consumption. We move along the lines of the mythical Santa is real. And it's an interesting facet of our storytelling that we generally start with that premise. We start with the premise that Santa is real. And we begin to tell stories that sort of like revolve around the Santa experience as this is what makes the holiday. And there's no fault in that. It's just that's what we do. This is how we have chosen to create the Christmas experience. There all these little ancillary things around it are fine, right? We, even in A Christmas Story, we all know what's really happening, but the kids still have this idea that, Santa is somebody. Somebody's giving us gifts. It's not just mom and dad. Something's happening. And that's okay. I appreciate that that's what we have created for ourselves. But as we move into the next half of our podcast, I really want to explore the idea that we didn't used to tell stories this way. Um, we used to tell stories that dealt with Christmas as a different kind of entity. And by that, I mean the Dickinson experience, um, or Dickinsonian experience. I forgot how they say it. Charles Dickens, when he wrote his very famous Christmas story, um, didn't just look at whether Christmas existed because in the heart of someone you have to believe in Santa in order to get a gift exchange. He looked at the inner workings of our society and said, here's where some problems are. And if you've read Dickens, I mean, that's what he's kind of famous for. He's famous for really bringing up kind of the blackness in our experience and saying, hey, this is what is happening. We need to pay attention. And I feel like every single adaptation of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge, has absolutely done something different in each of its adaptations to remind us at whatever moment that we're in that this is what's important. And I'll explain in a second. First of all, I'm sure, Josh, I'm sure you know that there are a million different adaptations of Scrooge. Well, maybe not a million, but many. Um, Tell me what your favorite is before I tell you. Before we launch into what I think is might be important about this. Tell me what your favorite is.
Well, my favorite is clearly the best one that's been made, Muppets Christmas Carol.
Muppets. I knew you were going to say that. And I do actually really like that one. I like it a lot. Um, One year, this was, I guess, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. I made it my holiday mission. I started at the beginning of November, and I started to watch every single Christmas Carol adaptation that I could get my hands on. And it's not as many as you would think. There have been a lot of adaptations of A Christmas Carol in theater, on Broadway, and we have done a lot of retellings of A Christmas Carol in sort of our mainstream media. That is, we take the story of Scrooge and then we adapt it to The Simpsons, or we give it a Bob's Burgers take, or we create something that feels Scrooge esque, and we apply it to a story that we already know. That's pretty common because it's become almost an archetype in our own sort of storytelling. But in terms of the actual live action films, if we go back to 1901, there is a short British film that is basically one of the very first. It's one of the very first stories that we put to film, anyway. But in fact, I think in some places it's called Marley's Ghost. It's interesting, and again, from someone who studied film, it's very interesting to see what they tried to do to create little effects. It's very, it's just interesting. It's silent, but it's very interesting. So there's that. If we move a bit forward, the first, I think, kind of, what we would recognize as a Scrooge story. really comes around 19, I guess I'm going to say the 1938 version with Reginald Owen as Scrooge and Gene, I think Gene Lockhart is in it, as one of the Cratchits. That is probably one of the first films that we would recognize if we saw it as, oh yes, this has all of the makings of A Christmas Carol. um as we move forward, though, the one that we usually all begin our collective history of understanding as Scrooge is the 1951 version that stars Alistair Sim. And this is an interesting one because it tells the story in, pardon the pun, a very black and white way. And it specifically looks at the what it means to be involved in industry over what it means to be a friend of the working class. It's just, there is something very black and white about that demarcation line. And so the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future do an amazing quick job of pointing out to him, here's where you were, here's where you are, and here's where you're headed. And Scrooge gets it right away. That's probably the easiest telling, and it was a standard telling for quite some time. But I'm here to tell you that, much like a great King Arthur story, the Dickens classic A Christmas Carol, Scrooge, is malleable based on what we are thinking about today. So, how we see income inequality, how we see workers being exploited, how we see what being a miser is, are they all come out in all of these different adaptations. One of my favorite adaptations is the one with Patrick Stewart. And the reason that I like that one is because Patrick Stewart is not just austere as Scrooge, but he truly doesn't seem to have the capacity to understand what's happening until he is shown things that sort of like not just melt his heart, but give him a more open understanding of what the experience he's having is. I really liked that. I think if I had to pick one, however, to be my most favorite, it is the 19, and I wanna say it's 71? I don't remember if it's 70, I think it is 71. Um, there is a musical, and it's crazy because this particular version, I think, makes me happier than any other Christmas story that I can think of. It begins same way that most Christmas Carol stories start out, we get the full sort of treatment of him being the miser, him not understanding that, the milk of human kindness is something bigger than you understand. But I also think I really love it because the music in Scrooge is so cool. We sing it. I mean, I sing it year round, but we definitely sing this particular. When this stuff comes on, everybody knows all the words. I've played it so many times. Um, I'm gonna. Have you seen it? I don't think I'm gonna say have you seen it. I doubt you have, but I'm gonna ask anyway. Josh, have you seen that?
No, I have not.
Okay, it's worth it. It's worth it to see. It plays. I think it's. I actually, you know what? We had to buy it, so I'm gonna say no. It probably isn't on Amazon Prime. I think we bought it from Amazon. Um, but it's totally worth it. Albert Finney is Scrooge. Alec Guinness, yes, Obi-Wan from the original Star Wars, is Marley's ghost. There are so many facets to this that are a little bit crazy. It's kind of a scarier version, actually, of Scrooge than maybe some. There's a scene in it where basically at the end, when the Ghost of Christmas Future is there, they are bringing out his coffin and they sing this song called Thank You Very Much because the townspeople are so happy that he's gone. And Scrooge doesn't understand that that's what they're singing, and he thinks that they are singing some kind of praise to him as if he's done something amazing. And so he just goes on his way thinking, yeah, okay, they must love me. Yeah, this is great. It's that kind of stuff that just makes me like, wow, there's something really cool about that. Um, and the Muppets version that Josh was talking about, that from 1992, I believe, has Michael Caine as Scrooge. And if we think about that one, we get a slightly different coalescing of what was important. Some versions of A Christmas Carol have Bob Cratchit's story being front and center and very important. In fact, in the musical, the Bob Cratchit story is extremely important. I mean, it's not just Tiny Tim, it's the being exploited. And so not all of them have Bob Cratchit as being like a center pivot point, but this particular one does. And in the Muppets, um, because we because of the way that it's told, I think we feel a kinship to the characters that perhaps we don't always feel if we don't really know who the characters are, if we don't really get to experience who these who the wider pieces of the characters are. So I really do like that one a lot. I also like the ending of that a lot too. That's a really good one.
Who played Scrooge in that one?
Michael Caine.
Nope, never heard of him.
Okay, well.
You might be talking about Mike Cocaine.
I'm sorry, is my American accent throwing you off there? Yes, that the same. The same.
A
That
little
also
trick to pronouncing his name correctly. You don't say Michael Caine. You say my cocaine.
oh, there you go.
So
Okay. I'll
who was
remember
it?
that.
My
Michael
cocaine.
Caine. There we go. The
There
the
you go.
Muppets Christmas Carol was also a musical, and it has some of the best music in it. I mean, you really can feel. In fact, who did the music for that? Um, Gosh, who did? Somebody famous did the music for that. Like a folk singer. Who was it? I don't remember.
Debbie
Um,
Gibson.
no, I don't think it was Debbie Gibson. Although that's an interesting idea. No, I
Music was composed by Miles Goodman with songs written by Paul Williams.
Paul Williams. There we go. Thank you. I was going to try to go look that up. Um, Paul Williams at the time when this was released was still uh, fairly big, and you can. I mean, the you can hear the folksy throwbacks in there. I really like this a lot. I love this. Okay, we're gonna move forward to the next Disney version of A Christmas Carol. The next Disney version of A Christmas Carol comes. Let's see, when does that come around? In 2012? Um, at some point after the Muppets Christmas Carol, there is another Christmas Carol that's done by Disney, and it's highly stylized. Jim Carrey is the person who is Scrooge in this, and it's scary as all get out. I mean,
Doesn't he
this is
play everybody?
does he? Maybe he does.
I think he does.
It's a crazy adaptation. It makes you made me, I should say, it made me uncomfortable. It still does. The ghosts are just like you really get the feeling that the spirit world is unleashed on Christmas Eve. It's very different from a lot of other adaptations. I really like it, and I don't feel like I feel like I would be remiss, I guess I should say, if I didn't mention that There was a Christmas Carol that had original music, that featured Colin Baker, who is the Doctor Who of yore. And that was also a really original kind of adaptation. Not that the story didn't remain the story, but that the music was very different and very cool. And as we kind of move forward into, um, I don't know, decade after decade, we are paying more and more attention to the Bob Cratchit story again. We're paying more attention to the, not always the redemption of Scrooge, although that is always important, but less important than the redemption, or I should say more important than the redemption of Scrooge, is the extolling of the virtues of the working class. So that's why you get the Bob Cratchit story as being a bit more important. So the ghosts, when they come, they're not just looking to give Scrooge some kind of redemption and hey before it's too late. It's like they're actually saving the Cratchits. And it's such a slight distinction, but it really changes the feel of the story. So anyway, there's a new one that came out on Apple TV, and it stars Will Ferrell. It's called Spirited. It is also a musical. There's a lot of great press around this. It's really high energy. It's very good. I liked it a lot. It is definitely a Scrooge story. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it gets there in just crazy ways. It's very fun. I definitely suggest if you have Apple TV, it's 100% worth watching. So, okay, I wanted to touch on all those because no matter what version of Scrooge you watch this year, or if you don't watch it at all, um, A Christmas Carol has become such an iconic part of our holiday viewing that it gets into everything else that we watch, right? All of our TV shows that we love that are, that we do serials of, they almost all have some kind of shout out to a ghost of Christmas past, a ghost of Christmas present, a ghost of the future. Somebody is always a Scrooge. It's such an interesting aspect to how we look at the holidays, much like the way that we have incorporated the Santa story as being kind of our focal point. The only other really big overarching story that we really have is the Christmas Carol. But I wanted to get your opinion, Josh. How do you feel about that, number one? And number two, um, what else do you see as being kind of really significant for us in terms of our holiday viewing?
Oh, that's a very heavy question.
It is.
Hmm.
Well, okay, let's break it down a little bit. Let's
Okay. Yeah.
break it down into smaller bites. So, bite number one would be, in terms of what you see on
Hmm.
TV for Christmas, whatever well, let's just call it holiday because there's more than just Christmas.
Right.
But in terms of what we see for the holidays, what do you think you identify with the most? Is it the Santa stories, or are they the stories that are more like the coming home for Christmas, the Hallmark kind of ideas? What are your idea? What do you like to see best?
Okay. Okay. I think when it comes to me, a good fantasy story is fine, but when it comes to the Christmas or holiday um, programming that I more gravitate to, I'd say it falls more in line with and this is kind of ironic, uh, the things with a sort of family theme. where there are problems, and by the end of it, everyone kind of not always sees eye to eye on whatever problem they had, but they realize that at least it's the time of year where we set aside any issues and come together.
So, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
Always.
Good choice.
You
Is there
don't see
anything
any
else?
lines, can you? Do you, Russ?
I mean, you can't get more wholesome than that,
No,
honestly.
Dad. Russ.
Okay. So does that also include movies like It's a Wonderful Life and
Yes.
White Christmas? Okay.
Home Alone.
Home Alone, that's another one. Very family oriented. Less Santa, more here's what the holidays are actually about.
And it's funny because I give Home Alone credit for being one of the very few films that could take a sequel where they just said, everything we did from the first one, let's do that. And it works.
Well, that speaks to the brilliance of John Hughes, though, because there's literally nothing that John Hughes does that isn't sort of edging on brilliance. Honestly,
I saw 16 Candles.
I love that. So don't be dissing on that movie.
It's a topic for another time.
Indeed. Um, I recently saw uh, a a movie that is, well, promo for a movie that's called "It's a Wonderful Binge." It's a wonderful binge. Let me read you the tagline for this movie. Sick of the saccharine Christmas cheer and looking for something on Santa's naughty list? Check out this Hulu original film that's a sequel to the raunch-com The Binge. It's a Wonderful Binge is another parody of The Purge. Yes, you heard me right. The Purge has been made into a Christmas movie. Except it's all the drugs and alcohol that are legal for one day of the year, and this year it just happens to fall on Christmas. Light 'em up, boys. Okay, so I have questions, I have thoughts, but I will say that this sort of goes into the bucket of there is something for everyone to watch this holiday season. If you're into a parody of The Purge, there's this coming out on Hulu. If you are looking for something a little bit more nihilistic, Hulu also has A Christmas Carol, The Scrooge Story, which is from FX, which is wow. That version of A Christmas Carol actually ends without any there is no happiness at the end of that. I mean, if you like to experience the world through or in the depths of nihilism, that's definitely the show for you to watch. Um if you want to sing and dance, there are tons of musicals that are coming out from Dolly Parton to Mariah Carey and classics like the Scrooge that I talked about that has the music in it. There are Muppets, there's Elf. There are all kinds of ways to experience entertainment over the holiday that cater to all these different ideas. I mean, we touched on National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, we touched on Home Alone. There's even the group of people who believe that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Won't get into whether that's a debate or not. I'm just going to say it's there. And if that's what you like to watch, that's an option. And I
It's a
feel like
Christmas movie.
yeah, I feel like there is something always okay. Hot topic, or hot off topic here. I saw an advent calendar that ticks down the days to Christmas with Hans Gruber falling down the skyscraper. So each day you make Hans Gruber fall a little bit further down the skyscraper until you count down all the way to Christmas. It's both the most macabre thing I've ever seen and also the most ingenious thing I've ever seen. It's
Love it.
very cool. Yeah,
Love
it
it.
was pretty great. So yes, so that is definitely out there. There's Krampus, which is the blacker horror slash Christmas movie. There's also a movie called Black Christmas, and Black Christmas is wow, that's a crazy. It's really is a slasher movie for Christmas. This year we have in the horror action craziness genre Violent Night, which pairs Santa, like the real Santa, against a gang of home invaders. And from all of the advanced press material, I wish it didn't look as good as it did because it looks really good. So there's my point is there's something for everyone to watch this time of year. You just have to pick something that makes you feel good, attach yourself to it, and there's tons out there from Amazon Prime to Netflix to Hulu to Apple TV to all of the other smaller channels out there. Licensing is across the board. So don't be afraid to go really explore some of the maybe free stuff that's on Roku. Look around for things that might make you feel good. There's just tons. um I am going to leave you with one last idea for Christmas, which I we watch this every year, and I actually kind of hate it. I hate I hate what it is, but I love to be involved in it because it kind of makes me feel like I can get all my Christmas drama out of the way and not and go, God, at least we're not like those people. Um Almost every single year we watch this movie called Christmas with the Cranks. And again, I hate it. I mean, nobody is actually having a good time until the very end. And I do mean the very end. But it reminds me of how sort of we pick apart the idea of Christmas and forget sometimes what the real effort is, which is to be around the people that we care for and love. Before I close out today, I just want to remind everyone that this has been fun. And of all people, I love Christmas. We're going to get our Christmas tree in the next 2 days. I'm super excited. Um,
Wait,
Christmas is
it's not up already?
I know. Well, I'm getting a fresh tree this year, and they don't actually cut them down until the weekend of. So
Mhm.
it's going to be a real fresh tree. They get them up off the mountain here. It's exciting. I'm excited. Okay, but all kidding aside, this is also a really hard time for a lot of people. If you live in the US and you are experiencing that kind of overwhelming sense of everybody else is happy and I'm not, first of all, know that you're not alone. Secondly, sometimes our entertainment paints a very false narrative of what Christmas really is. I mean, we use these shows to show us in bed for different ideas and, create, like Josh and I were saying at the very beginning, this overblown sense of nostalgia that we all have about, when we were kids and stuff. But don't feel like just because it's happening on a TV show or in a movie that it has to apply to you. Sometimes we can just experience these things and live vicariously through characters because that also can feel good. So I wanted to close with that because I certainly don't want to add to anyone else's mental health struggle about getting through the holidays when I already know that this can be a really tough time of year. The entertainment is for us to enjoy, not for us to have to suffer through. So just know that that's out there. Josh, thank you so much for being a guest tonight. I'm sorry if I did most of the talking. I know I had so much to talk about with A Christmas Carol. I just wanted to get that out. And um,
You didn't
again,
even mention the sequel,
you have my thanks. Which sequel?
A Carol for Tiny Tim.
A Carol for Tiny Tim.
Hmm.
No, I did not mention that because that's not actually a Dickens story. So
We're so hung up on original authors.
yeah, that's me.
Just
I'm
back in the day, high school, um, I I played Tiny Tim in that one.
Nice.
Yeah, so I have a deeply rooted connection to that material.
I mean, there was a Christmas Carol that broadcast in 1949 that was a 30-minute TV adaptation. So I mean 30 minutes. It was quick. And it was narrated by Vincent Price. So the storied history of A Christmas Carol is just a crazy one. Not only are there, like Josh said, sequels, and I would love to see a prequel to A Christmas Carol. That would make me very happy. But there's all kinds of like live musicals. There's all kinds of and the shout outs are my favorite. My favorite are when people actually use the word Scrooge to be a miser. I mean, Scrooge McDuck comes from A Christmas Carol. The name Scrooge as a miser comes from Dickens. It's so cool. I super love it.
Can I throw in two more things?
Yes, please do.
Okay. One, I would be remiss if we got through this whole thing and never once mentioned the name Burl Lives.
Oh, indeed. Well, that goes back to our Raspankin earlier discussion.
Hmm.
Yes, right.
He's definitely a voice that should be um, remembered uh, forever because
Yes.
it just doesn't feel like Christmas without his voice ringing somewhere, whether it's um, singing or narrating. It's just not Christmas without it. And of course, for those of you that are into um, Doctor Who, if there was ever a franchise that embraced the holidays, it's always been Doctor Who and their mostly annual specials built around
Right.
the holiday. So, oh, that's always fun stuff.
Yes, and each individual, I think, Doctor Who holiday special captures a different moment of Christmas holiday, and sometimes it's very interesting to see where they go with it because the writers oftentimes are focusing on things that are a lot more Brit, perhaps, than we in America are sometimes used to, but
Hmm.
they're so incredibly poignant and sometimes just sort of like duh, like in your face, of course this is what it's about. It's super interesting. I love all the Doctor Who holiday specials. I miss it when I don't get to see them in real time.
Hmm.
So yeah,
But
very
whether it's
interesting.
robot Santas or um, visiting an alien that is in dire need of seeing his past, present, and future, or
Right.
uh, or just hanging around with with Santa, Santa. It's always a fun watch.
Yeah, I totally agree. They always do something fun. Always, always, always. And just to correct myself, the Christmas Carol I was thinking of with Jim Carrey is it was done in 2019. I'm sorry, 2009, not 2019. So that has remarkably held up uh the test of time. That's crazy. That
It was a good one.
unbelievable. Yeah, I never would have guessed that it was that old. So that
And
that
he,
is
he
definitely
played
different.
Scrooge and the Three Spirits.
It's such an interesting that one we'll have to talk about that sometime. It's such an interesting idea. I really liked it a lot. Okay, so Josh, first of all,
Yep.
again, thank you for being my
You're
guest.
welcome.
And
Thank you for having me.
secondly, you're so welcome. And secondly, how can we get you on social media? And as a caveat to that, tell me one super awesome thing you're looking forward to this holiday season.
Okay. Well, first of all, you can just go to wadcomedia.com. That has all the pertinent social links and information. You can go there and find out what my Twitter is. You can find the Facebook pages. You can find pretty much everything, including the merch shop, where it's just filled with whimsicality.
I knew that was going to come up at some point.
Yes, yes. I might have to make a Christmas themed version.
Oh
Anyway,
God.
that's pretty much where you can find anything that you need to, you know, associate with me words, they're hard sometimes. And we do a whole bunch of podcasts. Jen and I, we do 10 to 1 every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. And we're kicking off the holiday season, I think, right on 10 to 1 with our next list, because that's what we do. We make lists on 10 to 1 about movies involving Santa Claus lore. So I hope you've been working on your list and checking it twice.
I have. I have
See
some
what I did there? Yeah.
I have some interesting ones this time.
And every Friday night, it's the Wadcast, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about the eras of Hollywood. And, there's been things a certain director has been saying about whether or not this is the worst era of films ever. And we have some things to say in response to that. So that's what we're going to be doing on the Wadcast every Monday night. One day, we'll get to the Christmas specials, but unfortunately, it won't be Monday. But our good friend Tori, who you would recognize from this show on a more regular basis, TV dinners, uh, she's never seen Doctor Who until now, and every Monday night we have Tori Finds the TARDIS, where we talk about an episode of Doctor Who. We're watching them in order. Series 1. Next episode is episode 3. Series 1, episode 3. Also, strangely enough, it's a I was going to say a little Dickensian, but no, it's very Dickensian.
It is very, yes.
Because it has Charles Dickens in it, you see.
Indeed.
So there's that. And that's me in a nutshell. Jen, I do need some advice, though.
Yes?
As you know, or maybe you don't know, I haven't been paying attention to myself. The holidays are fast approaching, and I have all of these favorite movies and specials that I absolutely love watching. But I just don't know what to eat with it.
Well, as it happens, I have a solution for that. That is, first of all, I'm just going to say it this way: make cookies. Just make cookies. That's what you do. Make cookies. We actually have 15 days of cookies coming up, and a whole bunch of other holiday pairings with different movies that are all holiday themed and what to eat while you watch them. One of my favorites so far is we did a Krampus one and we made the little gingerbread cookies from Krampus. It was really fun because we made them with these little fun ornaments attached to them, the ornaments that they throw at people. It's super cool. It was very fun. We had a great time with it. But during the month of December, we're going to count down kind of advent calendar style with 15 days of cookies. And then each one of the cookies has a specific themed movie or holiday special that goes along with it. So it should be really fun. I'm very excited about it. I'm rubbing my hands together because it's just going to be delicious. So yes, head on over to moviesandmeals.com and you'll see that. Also, like Josh said, join us for 10 to 1 on Wednesday nights at the same time. That is just an amazingly fun time. We really get into some pretty deep discussions about different movies, and it's really cool. I always learn something, and I always feel like it's a great time. Also, one sort of last piece of little business. Um, there are going to be moments, I think, over the month of December when we probably won't be able to get together and do podcasts for either TV dinners or whatever. And just know that if it's sporadic, it's just because the holidays do sometimes get in the way of being able to do stuff like this. But know that you are in our thoughts, and I hope, if I don't get to tell you beforehand, I hope you all have a great holiday season. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really had a great time. Josh, thank you so much for being my guest. We look forward to seeing you hopefully next week when we will be doing something slightly different than Christmas. We're actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this a little bit open ended. We're going to be talking about some of the things that are happening through the next year with different projects that are sort of on the calendar, including we now have a new Mandalorian date, some things that we're looking forward to in the year 2023. And let's have some discussions about what we're the most excited for. So that'll be happening next week. So until next time, we'll see you soon.